Welcome. I'm Reverend Bob Rangillian. Welcome here to the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County. Our opening words are by Philip Hewitt. We've come together from many different places. We are at different stages in our journey through life. Our paths are varied. We look at life in different ways. One thing we have in common, at one point or another, and to some degree or another, our lives have touched the life of Carole C. Burke. And so we've turned aside from our accustomed ways and gathered here to give expression to the thoughts and feelings that arise in us at this time of loss and completion. We are in springtime. There are seasons of the year and seasons in a person's life. Spring brings transition and rebirth. As we see in the greening of trees, may we think a bit on the concepts of rebirth as we think of Carole. Let us be honest with death. Let us not pretend that it is less than it is. It is separation, it is sorrow, it is grief. But neither let us pretend that death is more than it is. It's not annihilation. As long as memory endures, her influence will be felt. It's not an end to love. Humanity's need for love from each of us is boundless. It's not an end to joy and laughter. Nothing would less honor a vital soul than to make our lives drab. Let us be honest with death, for in that honesty we will understand life better and ourselves more deeply. But even in saying this, it is for us to realize that death has not brought us here today. Life has. It's not given to us to know much about death, nor do I think we really want to. It's a fact of life. While that fact is inescapable, our consciousness, our awareness is always oriented towards life. We did not come here because a person has died, but because she and we shared life. So it is that we've gathered to celebrate Carole's life, to consecrate the memories and the meanings that are a part of you because of her, and in so doing, proclaim the glory of life itself, even in the face of loss. It's also for us to realize there's no such thing as life in general. Only life in particular, as we have been reminded. Life in particular today means an individual so unique from the world's multitudes we cannot replace her, even if we would. And while the loss of her uniqueness may be more cause of grief and sorrow, it is an even greater cause for joy for us, for all she has brought to our lives in the many ways in which she enriched us. I'll start with some details from her life, but as you can see in our order of service, after some starting family and friends are speaking, we are going to open it up for others if you wish to think ahead to a brief thing you'd like to share about Carole. Some details from Carole's life. Carole Burke was born in Omaha, Nebraska on the 23rd of June, 1938 to Oliver Carole and Gladys Babcock Carole, and died on March 19th, 2024 in Laurel Park, North Carolina. In between those dates is what was most important. Where there is simply too much life to summarize, but highlights could include growing up in Oklahoma City and then moving back to Omaha, where her father, Oliver Carole, died when she was only 9 years old. His death had a profound impact on her childhood and her adulthood. She was Daddy's little girl, and her life was shattered when he passed. I've been told that she said that she and her mother never really got along after that. She couldn't wait to get married so she could leave home and start her own life. She graduated from Lindenwood College with a degree in philosophy and later in life got her master's in counseling from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. She married Larry Long at a young age, and after trying to have children and they were unsuccessful, they adopted a 5-day-old baby girl that they named Allison Elizabeth Long. She raised Allison in Omaha, Nebraska. Carole had her challenges with men and marriage. Her third marriage to Edward Burke was the keeper, though, for many years until his passing after 46 years together. Edward and Carole bought a home in Breckenridge, Colorado, and lived there until around 1996, when Allison started her family and the grandchildren were arriving. Daughter Allison and son-in-law Ben were married in Breckenridge and were living in Atlanta, Georgia. Carole wanted to live closer to Allison and her grandson, so she moved to Brevard, North Carolina, where she felt she belonged in order to remain in the mountains. These were the grandmother mountains as compared to the Rockies. Carole's treasures were her grandsons, Harrison, Hank, and Andrew, Drew. They could do no wrong in her eyes. Even during temper tantrums and teenage years, they were perfect. Once Carole's husband, Edward, fell ill and eventually passed in February 2018, her daughter Allison bought a small cabin in Hendersonville to stay during her many visits to the area to help Carole. Then she and Ben bought a house in December 2019 to be closer to Carole, as well as Ben's father, who had lived in nearby Flat Rock, North Carolina, and moved to Due West, South Carolina, which is south of Greenville. And it's a good thing this home option was there for them, because the dementia had progressed, and then COVID hit. And then a year after that, Carole fell and broke her hip. I'm told there were 2 failed surgeries and a severe MRSA infection that life had to contend with. Not to mention the dementia getting in the way of the healing. Allison relates that Carole became very tired and just wanted to move on. Hospice was a wonderful gift and transition, and made it come full circle from Carole's volunteer days with hospice through her life. Religiously, Carole had found a path in her adult life. In midlife, Carole came upon the teachings of the Buddha, which she had embraced, and redirected her life towards a deep inner inquiry. Through retreats and work with Buddhist and non-Buddhist traditions, teachers, and teachings, she developed a more subtle appreciation for what we call life, the world of spirit and meditation, the world of cosmology, the quantum world, and poetry became some of her travel destinations. Carole carried her mantra in her heart, accept what is with love. She had discovered Buddhism and also found this congregation, the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania, which she adored because it felt like home, comfortable, accepting and kind, just like Buddhism. She officially joined our congregation in April of 2018. Now, this ends my brief summary. As transition to further sharing by family and friends, let us sing as we're willing and able. You may remain seated. We'll sing a prayer translated from Buddhist sources found in the supplemental hymn book Unitarian Universalists use. The words to the 3 verses are on the screen or also on the back of your order of service. Would you start over, Anna, and we'll come right in with you. Thank you, Anna, for playing piano with us today. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. Michelle, I invite you forward to come and speak.
I don't think I need it, but.
The people
Okay.
online need you to need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness, and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful. Not proud of demanding in nature, let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Wherever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none, through anger or ill will, wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all senses' desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you.
I have down that Hank and then Drew will come forward, her grandsons.
Hello, thank you for being here. I have the distinct pleasure of reading some of, yes. Now can you hear me? Okay. I have the distinct pleasure of reading some of Carole, my grandmother's poetry. Only recently have I understood how immense of a part of her life this was, and how she used it to process life and handle things that life throws at you. So this is the poem that she wrote for me when I was on life's doorstep. So she wrote a poem called A Grandson's Gift. Like a shimmer of blue through the forest's leaky roof, your sky-dyed eyes startle my breath and rouse my sleeping smile. When I wander cautiously across the canyons of my mind, too afraid to look down, I see you tottering fearlessly across a sea of carpet, and I laugh at my cowardice. Child of my child, you are my joy. Crossing the sacred boundary, through the narrow passage of birth, you have altered me as well. Like the moon, I stay awake to see your sun. Love, Nana, 1996. After reading that, I want to just leave you with some anecdotes and some small stories that I will carry with me now for the rest of my life. So, thinking back on my relationship with my grandmother, I understand that we shared what I think of like as a predilection to wonder, a curiosity, a sort of marvel at life. What's life for? Why are we here? What's it mean to be human, to be there for one another? These kinds of things. I understand that she pursued those questions sort of first in majoring in philosophy in college, which I understand to be a quite brave thing to do as a woman in the 60s. So she took that on, and I think she did well with that challenge. And then additionally, later in life, she pursued further answers or things like that to those questions in delving into Buddhism and other practices, other ways of answering those questions or finding those answers. And I think she did such a great job of encouraging that curiosity in me because, like I said, we shared that predilection. And I definitely notice in my daily life that that's what drives me. I'm constantly curious, inquisitive about those questions to the end that I now pursue a PhD in neuroscience, trying to answer these questions, I think, through that avenue is the one that I've chosen. So I am very grateful for her for doing that for me. And as a sort of reference to that, and with sort of anecdotal story time, she encouraged that in me as a child by taking me whenever I desired to the library, to take advantage of her library card, to get any book I could get my hands on. And what I remember most poignantly is every time, I probably saw every episode of The Magic School Bus, with Miss Frizzle driving that school bus into human bodies, or the atmosphere, or into galaxies. And I think that, to me at least, sparked that desire and that curiosity that I still pursue today. So I'm very grateful for that. And I'm grateful that she did that even in the end, that with my famous car sickness, I would read those books to the unfortunate end of plastering the inside of her BMW with raspberries and other fruit that we had acquired on the way. So I'm grateful for her for sticking in there through that as well. And I think the last thing that I'll leave you with is this sort of image that I hold in my mind now of the time that I got to spend with her. And it is of something we used to do frequently together, which was go on walks in the woods. I noticed the images that were up here before we started of Mount Laurel and other nature things of the sort of southern Blue Ridge Mountain areas that we are in, and that evoked for me a lot of those memories of walking with her in the woods. And when we would do that, I would always, as sort of a small boy, be like, "Oh, did you see that bug?" Or like, "Crazy lizard, like, whoa, what was that?" And she'd be like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't see any of that stuff." And then I remember distinctly one time on one of these walks, she went, "Oh, I don't see any of that stuff because I'm always looking up. I'm looking up into the," as she wrote in this poem, "the forest's leaky roof." She was searching for birds or other beautiful trees that she liked to see. And I think that clicked for her because she said, "You know what? That's why I'm always tripping and falling. Because I'm looking up and you're looking down, and we just seeing different things." So that's a memory that I will cherish. And I think it both reminds me of her encouragement and my curiosity, and it also, I think, is meaningful to me because it shows that we all have our own unique perspectives on what life is and the things that we've experienced and seen in the world. And it's about coming together and sharing those so that we can see the full world, or all of the things that each of us has experienced. So I'm very grateful for that as well. And I think I'll leave you by saying that while I used to look down and she used to look up, now the roles have reversed. And now she's looking down and I'm looking up to her. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm a little more rambunctious grandchild, so I don't have quite those stories to tell. My time was spent walking through Deer Lake, running around away from her, and then, I don't know, picking up things, throwing things into the lake, making trouble. That was my duty as the grandchild, was making trouble. So I have the pleasure of reading one of Nana's, Carole's favorite prayers. So my grandmother was a Buddhist, and then she joined the Unitarian church later in her life. But I never really took her or was one to know her to be interested in Christianity or Catholicism. But this is a prayer of St. Francis. And then more to add to that story, Hank and I both have been to the chapel of St. Francis in Assisi. So a little added to that story. So yes, this is, according to my mother, one of her favorite prayers, which is new to me, but that's awesome to hear that. Here we go. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consul as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. I think when I was reading this a little bit before or after my mother had handed this to me, I think it goes back to her favorite thing to say is, accept what is with love. She likes to flow like a river. She's a very nature-oriented person, obviously moving up here to Brevard. So I think this poem goes back, it kind of goes back to her mantra for life is just flow, let the river flow, kind of accept what it is and just move on. Thank you.
I invite her daughter Allison to come up.
Whew, I can do this. Hi, welcome. Thank you all very much for coming. If I don't look at you, it's because I think I can do this if I don't look up. I really tried to put something together formally speaking. I'm not good at that. I don't plan ahead, Michelle. I don't do that well. I'm a fly by the seat of your pants and wing it. Everyone in here has a special memory with my mom, and I appreciate that so much. I think I need to start with the fact Reverend Bob brought up, which was that I was adopted at the young age of 5 days old. And so what I like to say when people ask what that's like being adopted or anything like that is that I was blessed with two moms, one that gave me life, and then the one that encouraged me to live, which was Carole. I never knew that I wasn't adopted. She made sure that at a very young age, she had written a story, and I wish I could find that. She had written a story about my adoption, and she used to read it to me, I guess, every day and forever, because I've never not known what it means to be adopted. I've been asked many times if I ever found my birth parents, and I never found that necessary. Out of respect for both, right? So my birth parents had a reason I thank them for giving me life because, for obvious reasons. But out of respect for them, they were young, they were 20 years old, in college, not ready to settle down. I respect that so much. And then out of respect for my parents, because why should I go looking for other parents when I had my parents? And so when you say things like, well, my parents, people would say things like, you mean your birth parents or your adopted parents? I'm like, all I know is my parents. So that was one and I feel like because she told me those stories at such a young age and always told me where I came from, that is why I chose to remain Carole and Larry's daughter. Kind of a funny story surrounding that was then I get to college and I join a sorority and we had parents' weekend and mom came because my parents were divorced when I was 2.5 years old. So, but my mom came for parents' weekend and, there's a big party or whatever at the sorority and they decide, maybe it was Mother's weekend, whatever. They did this mother-daughter look-alike contest. And so we kind of look at each other like, sure, let's do it. Because people used to say that we looked alike, which is a compliment to me, for me, to look like my mother. Not so much for her, because I'm like 3 times her size, but, so we went up there and there was, 8 or 10, mother-daughter couples, and then they narrow it down, and they decide the top 5 or something like that. And so they're saying number 5, and they're saying number 4, and they're saying number 3, and then they say, and number 2 is, Carole and Allison. And I went, wait, what? And, then whoever won, I don't even remember that, because all I will ever remember is that we came in second in a mother-daughter look-alike contest in college. So that's a blessing that I could look like my mom, because she was beautiful, as you can see. And so I had this put together, this hummingbird and the dragonfly, because we were the hummingbird and the dragonfly. My mama is the hummingbird, and I'm the dragonfly. And that all starts from our time in Minnesota. Her parents got a little cottage in Minnesota when she was 3 years old. So I guess it was, in the family for however many years that was. And so I spent my summers with my grandmother in Minnesota on South Long Lake and outside of Brainerd, Minnesota, where everything was hummingbirds. We had, tiny cottage, smaller than this room, about that big, just a square. If you look at the bottom of the picture I had made, that's her in the little face in the bed, and you can come up and look at it later. But I actually have a picture of me also in that same exact bed. It was a feather bed. I'll never forget. That's where I, grew up in my summers. But and so the hummingbird feeders were all around the cottage. We probably had 10, and the cottage was this big. So it was all about hummingbirds. And then you'd go down to the lake. And I won't talk about the mosquitoes, because that's a bad thing to talk about. So we won't talk about that and how Minnesota's known for that. Because I wasn't going to get, a mosquito tattoo. So you got down to the lake, and if you were out floating on the lake, the dragonflies would all come and land on you. And so that was just kind of a wonder for me growing up in Minnesota. And then later in life, I did get a tattoo, and I have a dragonfly on my hip. And Mother, later than that, decided she needed a tattoo. So for those that don't know, she had a very, very colorful hummingbird right here on her shoulder, the back of her shoulder. Colorful. Like mine is a sketch compared to hers, and the pain I can't imagine. So when I don't know if y'all know a whole lot about the hummingbird and the dragonfly, but someone that worked with hospice once said that through the transition, as people are passing, if you see a hummingbird right after someone passes, that means they made it to the other side. And the story behind the dragonfly is, they don't live more than apparently 24 hours. But the dragonfly is responsible for making sure that that person gets to the other side. So that is why we are the hummingbird and the dragonfly, because I was there at the very end holding her hand after she was worried that no one would be there for her at the end. So I was able to do that and be her dragonfly. Okay, so going through her poetry last night, trying to find the boys' poems, I came across this one, which is it brings out her sense of humor in her poetry. But it's about the Minnesota cabin, so I thought that would be appropriate to say, but it's not about a hummingbird or a dragonfly, but you will get a kick out of it. I mentioned it was a small cottage, so we had cold running water and no bathroom, so there was an outhouse. And our cousins had a place right down in front of us, right on the lake. We were just off the lake. And the same thing was, there was a little half moon, on a outhouse, which they're known to have. And so that was until later when my stepdad actually put in hot running water as well, but there was never a bathroom. And so for those of you who've used an outhouse, the first time you use one can be scary. So she wrote this poem, and it's called Minnesota Cabin, 1948. Her mother's hand guides her down the path toward the house with a half moon on the door. Inside, she sees 2 holes, gaping like mouths of the catfish her father caught that morning. Arms tight around her mother's knees, only the fear of losing control slackens her grip, allowing her mother to lift her into place. Mommy, where does it go? Deep down in the ground, dear. Later, watching her mother pump icy water from the well, she holds out her glass for a drink and asks, Mommy, where does the water come from? Deep down in the ground, honey. Here, Mommy, you drink it. That's it. Thank you.
Allison had hoped that maybe others might want to come up to the microphone here. If mobility prevents that, we can make an arrangement. But because this is going out over the internet or people may watch later, we would like you to use a microphone so that it can be heard. Is there anyone here wishing to say a word or two?
This is gonna be hard. I start crying. I met Carole later in life. She already had dementia. I just moved here. I've been here 2 years. The reason I am here is because of Allison. I mean, she's such an amazing friend. I was going through divorce and I was so lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I was homeless. Not really homeless, but I didn't know where I wanted to live or what to do. And Allison offered me to come stay at the cabin. She's like, no one's at the cabin. Why don't you come up? So I got my little puppy Hamish and drove up to the cabin, and Allison's mom was having a lot of issues. She was in, she recently fell, and so I didn't know anyone here, so I'd go with Allison and we'd go visit her mom, and I used to work in senior living, so I know dementia very well. And her mom and I just kind of connected, and we got along great. And, Allison, I try to help and work with Allison on how to deal with somebody with dementia. I had no problem listening to the same thing 100 times in a row. And then I started going to visit Carole like all the time. I just would go every weekend and I would sit with her and we would color. She loved adult coloring, so we did that a lot. And she would say, she's like, Michelle, why do you want to come visit this old lady? She's like, this sick old lady. She's like, don't you have anything else better to do? And I said, no, I really enjoy, your time. But she had such a profound impact on my life. I was really struggling with my divorce and what I was going to do. And she was so calming, and we used to read her poetry together, and, she taught me a lot about Buddhism. And then I didn't really know anything about Buddhism, so then I started like YouTubing everything. So we would sit and listen to like Buddhist chants, and she would teach me things. And she was amazing because I was struggling. I'd be reading to her and I couldn't pronounce half the words, and she knew them like anything, and it was just so amazing. But it helped me about guiding me on how I wanted to live my life. And, I reflected on, what I did wrong in my life, what I did wrong in my marriage. And she really had a profound impact on me. And she really taught me a lot. And I really enjoyed her, being with her all the time. But now to a little funny story. So we colored all the time, and that's what she loved to do. She did it all day. We did the adult coloring books, and I would call Allison, like, Allison, we're out of pens. We need more pens. She's like, what do you guys do? I'm like, all we do is color. She likes to color. And sometimes, depending on her mood, she would get mad, and she would get mad that I was using too much ink when I colored, because I would color like 20 pictures to her one picture. And it was funny when Allison and I were kind of going through her stuff, packing her stuff up. We were going through pictures. And Allison's like, oh, I'm going to keep these, some of my mom's drawings. I'm like, I did that one. I did that one. I did that one. And she's like, I want to keep it. But then we found some drawings with like these faces, like mad faces, angry faces. So she was mad that I colored ones, and she never told me like that she wanted to color that one. So then she just put angry faces on it. So, and I wish I should have brought them because they were really funny. They're hanging on my refrigerator at home. That's my memory. That's all.
Thank you. Carole, come on up.
Well, I bought a house here 23 years ago, and I met Allison before I moved into the house because we were both going to a group called Conversations with God, and I see some other Conversations with God people here, and a friend of mine said, wow, I would go to that group no matter what they were talking about. Doesn't matter what they're talking about because it was such a good group and very bonded. And throughout the years, I've been in many small group discussions with Carole. And indeed, she was always living out that philosophical yearning of learning more and knowing more and being more and seeing more. And I remember after she moved to Deer Lake, she bought the whole series by Brian Swim, who was one of our teachers, and she bought the whole series of videotapes and invited us over to watch them together and discuss those tapes. The other thing she did, I guess it was Leslie, I think it was maybe you and Carole went to a retreat with Brian Swim and brought back the book Soulcraft, which I loved, and I got started down that path, and I went to a lot of retreats on Soulcraft. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. So Carole and I just kept running into each other throughout the years and just really connection over the years. And but then, of course, she got busy doing her Buddhism thing, and I stayed busy doing my UUism thing. And so we didn't stay much in touch. One day, Ann Rabb and Earl Rabb showed up at my house, and they were going to have lunch with us, I guess. And I had a Buddha sitting on my porch because I love images of the holy wherever I find them. And Ann Rabb says, oh, Carole, you're Buddhist. She said, I didn't know that, but she said, would you like to have all these books that Carole Burke left? They were over at her house, and I don't know what to do with them. And Allison is a little frantic. She's trying to sell the house. And I agreed I would put them in the right place. And I said, well, you know, actually, I'm probably not the right person for that, but I do know a person who's a Buddhist. And so I gave the books and poems and journals and everything to a friend of mine named John Walters. And when he started looking at them, he said, Carole, man, I don't know that I can do anything with these. He said, because she's really done a lot of really advanced work in Buddhism. It's like she's gone to some of the most major retreats and have received some of the latest, you know, John might get up and talk, but probably not, rituals related to becoming a bodhisattva. And the bodhisattva is the individual who has committed to returning to this life throughout eternity until everyone on this planet has achieved enlightenment. And friends, the way it's looking now, that may be a long time. So the next group you end up in, you could look for Carole Burke, okay? Well, then the next thing that happened, I mean, Carole keeps showing up in my life, and so I expect to see her again, maybe as a hummingbird, but one day I didn't have much to do, so I'm looking at Facebook, and the UUs have a group. And my cat, Midnight, had just died, okay? Midnight was black. He was a black cat. And he had just died, and there's this beautiful cat that shows up on our Facebook page, and I'm going, God, this is one beautiful cat. And Dan, who was my new partner after my other partner had died, he was my new partner, and Dan and I were talking about adopting a new cat. And Midnight had died, and it wasn't really Dan's cat anyway. And I said, Dan, look at this cat. It's a beautiful cat. And he said, yeah, I think we should adopt this cat. Well, the cat was named Rosie, and we called John Walters up and said, John, do you know Allison? Can you tell her we really want this cat? And so John called Allison called us, and Allison brought the cat over, and we've been loving Rosie for the past 2 years. So Carole Burke lives with us in the form of her Buddhist cat. And I need to say to you, grandchild, because Carole loved her grandchildren, Ian McGilchrist is the most fabulous neuroscientist I have ever met. He's on YouTube. I'm going to write his name down for you. He is brilliant. I am like Carole. I can't stop learning about neuroscience. So I celebrate you and Allison and Allison's husband and Rosie and Carole.
I'm looking for a hint as to whether anybody's maybe. Thank you all for sharing and celebrating. Please join as you are willing and able in singing Amazing Grace. The words will again be on the screen. Sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun. Before I close this service, on behalf of the family you are invited to linger and enjoy the refreshments in the social hall. Whether in this gathering or in the future, I invite you to celebrate Carole and the memories that you have of her. This is a brief poem by Rossiter Worthington Raymond. He wrote, "Life is eternal, and love is immortal, and death is only a horizon, and a horizon is nothing save the limit of our sight." No eulogy can fully convey all that was her life. No stone monument will epitomize who she was. No tribute is ever going to capture her spirit. No history will do her justice. Only you can do right by her. And you can do so only by sharing your memories and stories, and most importantly, by living so that others will remember the best of her in how you go about her life. No higher tribute can any human being receive.